Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Liberatory Love. In this video, I'm going to outline the kind of three main areas that I have my focus on as a leader and the different endeavors that I'm working on beyond Liberatory Love as well. But I want to root it in this channel since Liberatory Love as a larger expression, not just as a business, is kind of the heart of any endeavor that I have. So I invite you just to take a deep breath in and out. And I invite you to consider your experience of family. With a single word, there can be such varied experience and varied emotions. And with a single family, there can be such varied emotions. There can be both extraordinary love and acceptance, and also rejection or isolation, fragmentation. And there can be that within the same family. And it is my experience of family as number 7 in a family of 12 children that has inspired me to do everything that I do. And also being a completely unique individual and still being connected to that family and navigating what is my relationship to this family and being a human being and viewing myself as actually connected to a collective that I would now consider my family, even though there is technically a biological blood family that has my last name. That family doesn't actually feel as close to me anymore as my recognition that I belong to a larger human family. These ideas and thoughts came to me through people who were members of the Baha'i faith and who really introduced me to a vision for a more collective way of being in the world and vision for humanity. But beyond that framework, I've also traveled and experimented with the principle. Any theory is just a theory until you practice it. And living into what it means to be part of a collective family is what is continuing to inspire what comes out of my system. Another thing that I would invite is just letting yourself consider a moment of creative expansion where you really felt, you might not have called it that, but you might have been playing music or making art or singing or dancing or doing or building, doing something in the space of engineering where you're actually constructing or creating. And just take a moment to notice or see what comes up when you feel that. What's interesting is while family brings up can bring up really mixed emotional views within the space of creating, even though we can be doing vastly different things on the outside, the inner experience tends to be one of extraordinary freedom and joy. At the same time, if you have a result that you're working toward, the process of creation can also be a process of depression, depletion, anger, angst, frustration. Because as we create, we hit setbacks. As we create, we envision, and as we envision, we experience the feeling of lack of that vision not being so. For me, being a writer, being a visual artist, that experience has also been very present in my life. From the time I was a kid, I would rip up and throw things away every time I thought they were imperfect. I also would win awards on the books that I would make and the art pieces that I would do. People sometimes would buy my art. I redid paintings just to have them rebought. And yet, every single time as an adult where I started getting paid for the work I was doing, I would start to resent the work. Not everyone wants to make their art paid, but for those of us who do, there's often a love-hate relationship with both having what feels like a soul mission or purpose or something deeply fulfilling, and then operating it within demands that feel unnatural. So creativity is the second thing that has really inspired everything that I do. It's this belief that despite, just like with family, there is this dual experience of hardship and love and beauty, that there is something worth working toward in family and expanding the limits of what family is, and with creativity, that there is something worth working toward within the creative space that is beyond just what we associate as creative, and that it's still worth working toward, even as it's excruciatingly painful at times. And then the third image that I will ask you to think about is a lot harder to ask you to cultivate an image of. It's a time that you truly stepped into something that became something completely different than you had a lens for previously. Like you couldn't have seen it on paper. For me, that journey has been in my relationship with sexuality. It's also been through in travel and in saying yes to life, and it's also been in religion. But this comes in all kinds of places, in all kinds of ways. For me, it was like, I know what religion is. I lived it a certain way for X many years. And then actually cracking it open in a personal way changed my identity, is changing my identity. It's not done. Sexuality was another space where I was raised with very strict views around what this is and how it should be and where it should be and who it should be with. And for me personally, cracking that open has been a journey of literally shifting who I am. And as I said, it's still shifting. And these processes happen in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of places, even though I would say religion and sexuality are pretty big, but I know those two areas alone don't even attract many people. So I invite you just to think about a journey. It also could be with parenting, it could be with a certain type of career, or saying yes to a part of life. And maybe you haven't really felt it and your life has felt more predictable. But I invite you to think of one moment and consider what it could be like if more of your life had that experience. Like, where is it going? What's happening? That feeling I now put a word to, which is the void. The void is also what I would describe the emptiness after my brother's death. And I still fight with that void. So it's hard for me to just settle into it or say that it's been more than what I expected, because it's been more than what I expected in a really painful way. But maybe that's another example. But at the same time, sticking with that void instead of escaping it has given me the outlet to create. And another word for the void, a different word, they don't have to be the same, but another word is the precipice. This a friend has given me, and the precipice, as I understand it, in the way that I speak with her, is an opening that is totally, you can't see the end of, that you don't know, I mean, whether it's a precipice that you're jumping or leaping into, or a precipice that's going to be created, it's not really on me to sit here and even say. So I share all this because you might not have a shared experience with me. You might not be one of 12 children. You might not have traveled. You might not be wanting to go deeper into religion and sexuality, and you might not be feeling like you're a creative person, or like you would put yourself in the bucket of creativity. But at the same time, you know this feeling of love and hate. You know this feeling of flow and despair. And you know this feeling of openness to unknown. There's not an either or there for me right now. Terror, I'm still in it. Maybe, yeah, just like terror, restriction. contraction on one side and then like expansion and spiraling and opening on the other. And it is that third feeling that's allowing me to make this video when my present moment experience is contraction, is fear, is don't speak out loud about these things. And it's also my experience with all of them that lets me know I'm making something brand new in the world. And when I coach people, I tend to try to elicit these types of experiences with people. I try to elicit the types of experiences that have had like really visceral emotional shifts, have created really visceral emotional shifts in somebody's life so that you can see bits of your own soul speaking to you or bits of your own consciousness speaking to you about your life. And then as a creative person, what I think is really fun is that you can actually take those bits and sort of put them together in new ways and see a new way that your life could look based on how visceral those experiences are. A smaller version of this, and this is going to get into how I'm opening up to this year, but a smaller version is a daily practice, and a simpler version is from Tony Robbins. He talks about in the morning choosing 3 highlights of your life because we're very sensitive as humans, and priming or choosing things that open up channels in our mind set the tone for what we receive the rest of the day. Start the day with 3 memories of experiences that lifted you up, lit you up, have filled you with joy. And then just start, receive all those emotions as you set the tone for the day that you want to go into. So that's a daily practice that you can do. There's still this ability to say, okay, if I take these things and I actually make with them, what gets to come forth? And this truly is different than just saying, what did I like about my day? What was the highlight? Because the highlight isn't always the most intense part. I want to have an alive life. I want to support people to have an alive life. And aliveness is also coming from the moments that feel like they're killing us. And that's in the work that I do. The reason why spirituality and somatics to me go hand in hand is spirituality is the awareness of a more subtle, in yoga, they would just call it a more subtle reality. And in somatics, we're talking about the experience of the whole being. So not erasing or eroding, like because I can meditate, I don't have to like acknowledge that I'm heartbroken. It's like my heartbreak is actually making me physically sick, and I can meditate and get to another state. No one is teaching us how to do these things. No one is teaching us right now how to really, or it's not easy. It's not intuitive. You're not going to turn on the news right now. You're not going to turn on the radio. You're not going to open a magazine and hear about how to start to create a life based on aliveness. You might hear about happiness, you might hear about joy, you might hear about manifestation, but create a life of aliveness or richness is brave and uncharted and requires facing your fears and requires facing pain and requires being aware and willing to see oneself as part of a larger picture. I foresee in this upcoming year for me, before I go in, maybe also take a moment to actually write down for yourself 3 areas where you've had very potent emotion. And if there's a place of potency that feels like this is too much, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. Like this heartbreak really affected my life, but I don't want to keep like creating my life from that. But I know I was really alive then. Still write it down and message me and let's see. What are 3 areas where you have felt most alive? And what would happen if your life had more of that? Not necessarily. You can separate the event from the feeling. Maybe you don't want to get in an accident again. Maybe you don't want to go through that physical pain again, but you know what it feels like to be humbled. You know what it feels like to be shooken into the fact that you're alive. You know what it feels like to feel like you're like being called in or being called up or being called forth. And then an aliveness experience too can be fucking delight and freedom and peace. And then you as the artist of your life, you as the creator of your life, you get to start to play with, what does this feel like together? Just with me holding this like base, a family of creativity, of precipice or unknown. These are some of the ways that I'm directing my energy this year. And I personally am orienting at this moment toward business because I need to be able to create in my day. That's just a lifestyle need for me. I need to be able to create. I need to be able to make. I need to be able to be mobile. I need to be able to move my body a lot. And like work environments right now, they don't offer that in the way that I need. So that's really the priority of me working for myself, aside from being defiant and having really strong opinions. But um, there's so many other places where you could work. These are some of the larger things that I'm working on outside of anything professional. I'm working on, peace building, political consciousness, and people empowerment. Peace building is the acknowledgement that our world is actually capable of and wanting to be connected. Peace is about connection. Everyone thinks that war takes effort because it's aggressive and peace is passive. Actually, peace takes effort because it is proactive and war is passive. I mean, in the way that war is operated right now, no, it's an industrial complex and there's a military industrial complex that is obviously something people are profiting of and is taking strategy and planning. But if you look in your own life, when you are fighting with someone, are you more active when you're fighting? Are you more active when you're actually trying to work toward peace? Political consciousness acknowledges that politics is not just any way in which we perceive our two-party system or our national governments. It's an acknowledgement that we, the people, get to choose life on this planet, that the political organizing of the day is not the end of what politics looks like, and that politics is under construction. We are under construction, which leads to, and having a larger view of this, of a global politic. And a global politic does not mean having just one little group of elites deciding the world, but it means people around the world connected to one another who are seeking to foster a culture that promotes life, that promotes peace. And these things are not just utopian. They're not just oftentimes what we perceive when we hear peace or we hear even a peaceful governance. We imagine depression or suppression or oppression of people. But this would actually be a creative politic of human aliveness, facilitating their life. For some reason, we think that sounds impossible, even though we ourselves know that in our life, we work for our own peace. In our life, we work for our own aliveness. And yet we think that in a world level, that's not possible. Well, the world is just a macro version of a bunch of micro minds. So if we were actually aware of that, then of course we would be able to think differently about possibility. So that leads to the final section, which is people empowerment. And this is different than just personal empowerment, which says that I need to be the strongest I can possibly be. People empowerment acknowledges that I am part of a people, I'm part of a collective, and all of us can be stronger. And also there's times where you need to separate from that collective because that collective is embodying toxic behaviors and you need to come into yourself, but yourself is always connected to the larger whole. I hope this offers some insight into another vision for the world than the one that we have right now. Or I should just say another vision for being in the world than what our current like media and even spaces of reflection are. expanding into. I know that sounds abstract, but literally expanding into, like, our imagination is too small. And the person who first inspired my thinking back in the day was Paul Farmer, who would say these problems are a crisis of imagination. And he passed, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago. A doctor working in Haiti and Rwanda and Mexico. So it's just a reminder again, like, we don't get that much time. We don't get that much time here. And even though all of these things might sound like they're beyond my personal life, they are. They are. But don't you, what do you want to experience here? How can you experience the most true version of yourself? And the challenging thing with all of these things is being able to hold the contradictions of the self, the collective, the varying needs, and the current existing structures that we're living and operating in. But we can handle a little freaking contradiction, which leads to creativity. Elegance Lab is my creative hub. And there's really kind of three buckets here. It's creative consciousness, collaboration, and emergence. To be honest, I don't really know what my clients look like yet for Elegance Lab, but the best that I can think about it is Danella Meadows' Thinking in Systems. It is really this acknowledgement that it's really not just an acknowledgement, it's a desire to be partnered with other thinkers who are wanting to build and co-create different ways of being in the world. And I say creative consciousness because creative consciousness for me is an expression of human agency, human play, human capacity beyond how we currently perceive, like, discuss the capacity of humans, which is usually like as harmful or self-destructive or broken. Creative consciousness acknowledges that creativity is actually part of our plan, part of our being, part of our DNA. Collaboration means we're doing it together, and emergence means that it's not, we can't see the end and we're building it, and we're going to let it become. Again, all of these things are not inherently built into our current economic system, so they're all going to be countercultural, from consumer culture, competition, and linearity. But that's why we need it. And I really couldn't do the other work I'm doing without this, because I am fundamentally seeking to shift how business is even being done in my work. And to do that, I need to reimagine the economic system at the same time. And there's those of us who are going to be working at every level and layer of the systems that we're in. And this is what I want creative consciousness to support, the shifts that are happening. And really this acknowledgement of disruption, destruction, deconstruction that is happening alongside creation, emergence, building. So Liberatory Love, specifically as this existing business, Liberatory Love is really about our personal expansion. And for me, I'm working on the things that I feel I'm meant to work on. There's literally infinite ways to support human beings in healing. But for me, I have been called into a practice of spirituality, somatics, and sacred sexuality. And right now, I would say this is still a pretty unique overlap, even though it doesn't have to be, and it won't be in the future. But spirituality or consciousness work is the acknowledgement, again, of these subtle layers of ourselves. Somatics is the experience of the entire being. And sacred sexuality is a combination of those first two and sexuality as well. And it's, to me, the thing that actually allowed everything here to come forth. If it wasn't through having a new relationship to my body, I would not be sitting here with ease and clarity. Like, literally today, this sacred sexuality is a daily practice. It's a way of being, it's a way of connecting with the self, but also over the last 2 years, especially as I've been working on this, sacred sexuality is the acknowledgement that I am containing God within me. And it's also, to me, a highly political act because it is reclaiming the body as our own. And one of the things that disempowering consumer politics does is violent politics does, separative politics does, is keep us disconnected from our body through keeping us connected mostly with the experience of fear. And the reality is, like, if you were deeply connecting with the fullness of your body, you would self-source joy. Because the deepest experience you can be in with your body, which is energetic release, you could call that orgasm, but you can energetically release without having an orgasm. You can be an asexual person and experience energetic release. The heart of that is peace. So the politics of this day involves keeping us disconnected from our body in order to keep us in the state of fear, in order to keep us in the state of submission. Submission to a politic that is deadening us. And what sacred sexuality is, or awakening to the body is, somatics is, spirituality is connecting to the innate joy within your being, the innate experience of self that is in itself an expression of God force, because you cannot be replaced, even if you don't call it God. It is your own unique essence here, now, in this moment that has come from every person who's walked before you that led to you being here. So liberatory love is also about the way that we date, the way that we marry. It's supporting, create other options than just only viewing ourselves as mere puppets in a game of play house and stay in the house and don't complain and don't speak. But it's also revival of peace and joy and freedom at the deepest levels, which is embodied. This is about embodied love, embodied liberation, which has nothing to do with whether you just speak a word or not. It's about what is being expressed through the system. And this is what is ultimately needed in our future leadership. We don't just want leaders who are talking about peace or building an experience of justice through their best estimates. We want it to be coming from us, co-creating together from our truth. All right, enough on that for now. The third thing I'm working on is something a little more kosher, a little bit more available to the world, and it is digital thriving, or Thrive. And I, on public, just call it health, wealth, well-being, but really I'm connecting people with reconnecting to their mind and body, connecting to the experience of co-creation, which I think is at the heart of wealth. It is being able to welcome in abundance that is trying to reach us, and finally well-being. But in this case, in our digital worlds, the number one thing that I'm supporting people in is digital wellness. And I put relationships right next to that, because while relationships, you could say, is all of this, if we do not have an image or a vision for thriving relationships, we'll never be able to have a vision for thriving virtually. So long as we are in a state of believing that peace is a utopian ideal and not a daily practice, we will always be, or more likely, be satisfied with technology that promotes war. Versus if we actually can envision a world where we, the people, are co-creating the world, it's not just anarchy to raise up the world in a new way, it is a chaos in process of heightened, excuse me, heightened realization of who we are. Then we're going to have a problem with the tech that's being built. Excuse me, that's not promoting that. And obviously, that's not a question that everyone's having on their mind when they're opening up their phone and opening up their iPad. But I was just at a conference this year in Chicago with people from all over the world who are looking at justice issues and technology. And I have the sticker right here on my laptop, Take Back Tech. And what the digital world gives us is the opportunity to actually see the worst of ourselves reflected, but also to see new possibilities of what we could be using our creative intelligence for. Because if our technologies can actually compute things that the human mind can't, then what do we want to use the human being for? What do we want to be? Maybe we will actually be. But if we're not paying attention, we will use this moment to create new forms of doing that self-destruct. On the outside, there's a lot of joy behind each of these efforts. Creativity is very joyful. Opening people up to sexuality and love is very joyful. Opening up people to their own consciousness and choosing the life that they want, getting off their phone and getting into the world is very joyful. And this video is about the stakes of this, that these are not, that at the core of all of these efforts is more than a fashionable outfit that makes you look nice on the outside. It's a fundamental restructuring. And a business is just a business. Yeah, I'm always going to be offering joy, but I'm always going to be working toward power so long as I live here, because I can die any day. And I'm always going to be doing it in the best way that I know how for now. And for anyone who's already been a part of my life, already worked with me, then you know that there's cycles and there's seasons. I ask and invite compassion for yourself in your own cycles and seasons as well. And for the necessary amount of complexity in all of this. And also for the ways that this is not just a mental framework. This is not just a thinking model. There's a reason that throughout this, in all of this, there is the essence of the full human being and the mind involved and the mind body involved. And the mind body, again, is not just our own individual minds and bodies, but it is our collective consciousness as well. So it's not always just going to click when we hear something spoken to us. We need shifts in relationships. But I hope that the creation of some of these businesses and spaces to begin brainstorming around these subjects will ultimately free up time in my life to be doing the other side that I want to be doing, which is, of course, just relating and loving and being connected. But I share all this to share that this is what can happen when you let your potency lead you, not what anyone else is telling you to lead you. These efforts have come from the last 7 years. And on studying and reflecting and letting things work around in my system and letting myself spit things out. They are not the most true things. They're not the only things. They are not the only ways to approach the things, but they are my system experimenting, expressing, receiving, spitting out, retaining, walking with, working with. And more, the journey is feeling freeing, even though I am taking on and choosing more and more responsibility. And maybe that's my closing piece as someone who's gotten to live in Hawaii and gotten to travel and be on beaches and have really good health. I think I have a rare thing that a lot of people don't, which is really fucking good health. I also take care of it, but I also was gifted with really good health. And I think there's so many people who are just striving to have good health, and there's so many people who are just striving to have a loving family. And both of those are such needed and wonderful things. And as someone who, for some reason, was born with good health and a beautiful family and financial access to a degree, I can still say that taking on more responsibility is more freeing. And I say this as a total free spirit who wants to live a very, very, very free spirited, freedom filled life. That responsibility in the direction of your soul's desire frees you more. I hope this offers some inspiration, some consolation, and some disruption, disturbance, and curiosity. And if you would like to work on any of my specific 3 endeavors, let me know. And if you would like to reflect on something, you can email me. And in the meantime, just allow yourself to let this permeate. Take a walk, write, see what's coming up for you. And at the very least, please redefine power for yourself.